Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hit and Hustle from IrishSportsDaily.com. I am your host, Greg Long, and with me, as always, is Jeremiyah, Mr. Jamie University. It is Tuesday, January 7th, and in a couple of days, we've got Penn State versus Notre Dame in the college football playoff semifinals, and we've got a special guest on for you today. We're going to have Landon Tengwall on, former Penn State offensive lineman, former Notre Dame recruit, and current host of the Behind the Wall podcast on YouTube. You're going to want to check him out there. He's been doing a ton of breakdowns on Notre Dame's defense and offense, and he breaks it down kind of like us, Jamie. It's fun to have someone on the show who knows the X's and O's, kind of like we talk about the X's and O's. So that's going to be a very fun conversation. Talk about matchups, talk about some of the things that he sees that Notre Dame can exploit on Penn State and what Penn State can exploit on Notre Dame. It's going to be a very fun conversation. So he's going to be with us for a little bit. We're going to bring him on in just a second. But before we get to him, we got to talk about ESQ Clothing, the presenter of our show. Founded by Notre Dame alum Ge Wang, you've seen ESQ on all your favorite Notre Dame players and coaches with over a decade of making the best custom clothing available. ESQ will help you look and feel your best in 2024 from a perfect fitting suit or sport coat, shirt, or bomber jacket, or the perfect tuxedo for wedding season. Check out Ge's amazing work at esqclothing.com. Book an appointment to upgrade your wardrobe today. Mention ISD and get 10% off your entire purchase. If you like what you hear today, please hit the like button. Please hit subscribe. Please hit the notification bell. So wherever it is, we are going to go live. Links to the podcast are in the description below. Jamie, so without further ado, let's bring on Landon, and we're going to have a great conversation. Landon Tengwall, thank you for joining us. How are you doing on this fine Tuesday afternoon?
Doing well, gentlemen. Greg, Jamie, thanks so much for having me on, man. And not a ton of sleep these past couple of days. One, because I'm just addicted to watching Al Golden's defense, and then number two, I generally just can't sleep. It's too much anticipation on both ends, and I'm really excited for this game. I don't know if there's a better matchup out there in college football from a historical standpoint, and then the fact I don't think there are two teams that are more similar than Penn State and Notre Dame in college football right now. They stack up so well. I'm excited for this one, guys.
Yeah, it's a pretty even matchup, right? So I think last I saw, Notre Dame was favored by 1.5, which to me is
two now.
I think I said 2.5.
Yeah.
Okay,
It went
now.
two. It went two, and then it went 2.5. So it keeps moving a little bit more in your favor.
Well, it might be a little bit of Abdul Carter. People wondering what his availability and that sort of thing. So to me, it's like similar to the Georgia game. It's going to be a pick 'em, basically, right? Like anytime it gets to like a point or whatever, maybe people think Notre Dame is favorite. I mean, they just beat Georgia, so that helps with public perception and that sort of thing. But as you said, the matchups are very similar. Notre Dame is 4th in F+ rankings. Penn State is 6th, right? So it's not like there's a big difference there. Landon, I want to get into kind of the things that you've been breaking down over the last couple of days, right? You were on it, but basically right after the Sugar Bowl, you started getting in on Notre Dame and looking at some of their stuff. Just kind of a general overview of what you've seen from Notre Dame in your studies so far. What is your impressions of the Notre Dame football team?
Yeah, well, first off, I was mad when the game. Obviously, my heart goes out to all the victims. But when the game got moved, I'm like, it all moves up a little bit because I wanted to get cracking on the film. And so I have Georgia's film and I have Notre Dame's film. So I'm just itching. And I'm like, I'm not going to spend the time looking at one or the other and then it wastes my time. So I was sitting there and then about maybe halftime? And I was like, I'm going to start looking at the Notre Dame film. I'm like, I think it's Notre Dame. So I was watching Notre Dame film before Georgia and Notre Dame were even over. And I'll tell you this. I mean, you guys know this. Watching the game on the TV copy compared to the All-22 tape, it's not even the same game. You're not even watching the same thing because there's so much little things to pick up. We'll start out with the best part of Notre Dame, the defense, Al Golden. My number one takeaway, it doesn't matter what numbers are on the field, meaning the guys, everybody does their job. It's one of the most sound defenses I've ever seen. The blitz pickup is going to be a big issue for us. That was a problem against Boise State. You guys obviously love your blitzes. You guys are big. We'll talk about it. But, 2 penetrators, 1 looper. You're always moving guys, making the offensive line have to think. My other big overall piece, Xavier Watts is one of the most impressive safeties I've gotten to study. I also got to study Caleb Downs when we played Ohio State. I think Caleb Downs is number 1. I think Xavier Watts is number 2. His play recognition is off the charts. And when he comes down to make the tackle in the flats, my favorite thing about him, he always breaks down and jumps out a little bit. he will never let contain be broken. And I made the job. I'm like, I'll go and trust this dude with his life, his kids, his safe in his house, because Xavier Watts is always making sure that it is on lockdown. And he trusts that the other 10 guys, hey, I'm going to keep contained. And he still normally makes the tackle, but he trusts that, hey, my guys are coming. I got backup coming. Let me keep contained, make sure I got this. And it was impressive. Defensive line is obviously a lot of movement there in the run game as well. That's also something Penn State struggled with when we played Minnesota. They kind of ate our lunch because they were constantly moving. It was messing up our double teams. And any time that a defensive line is stunting and moving, it's just you're changing mid-play maybe where the double team's going to go. Who is the double team? It might be pre-snap between a tackle and guard, and then the stunt basically turns it into it has to be the center and the guard. Doing all that post-snap is not easy. So Al Golden does a really good job of challenging the opposing offense to make them, use their eyes and have great communication. He's going to test you. On the offensive side, very bland, kind of like the Penn State offense. I would say really they're almost identical. The big difference is you guys run more screen passes, and then you obviously have designed quarterback runs, which we would have, but bye Bo Pabula. So that if you don't know, we had a backup quarterback that was basically the number one quarterback in the transfer portal, and he's now heading to Mizzou. He's headed to Mizzou. And we were doing a lot of read out. We were doing a lot of basically how Riley Leonard plays. We had packages like that for Bo Pabula, which would have been great for this game. But so we don't really have that element of our offense now that we had earlier in the year. But those are the two differences. You guys love the screen pass and you love the quarterback design runs. Outside of that, it's almost the same offense. It's crazy. The passing schemes are both awful for both teams. So not to be rude, but I'm saying my team too, dude. Now we stretch it a little bit more because we have the quarterback with the better arm. But we don't throw down the field at all. I mean, there was a 3-game stretch where we didn't throw a pass more than 15 yards. And I kind of saw the same thing from Riley Leonard and the Notre Dame crew. Obviously, the run game is where it's at. I was really impressed with the offensive line. I actually just put down a 2-minute film breakdown on Twitter about those guys. Joe Rudolph, one hell of an offensive line coach from what I've seen. He's dealing with guys that are maybe a little undersized, maybe not the most athletic, but damn it, they play their butts off and they will dive trying to just make sure a hit doesn't get put on Riley Leonard and independent hands, a lot of cool stuff. I'm a big fan of what they're doing for the offensive line. And then obviously the running backs, we'll see what happens with Love. I'm sure he'll get 6 to 8 carries, something like that. Might be a little limited. But look, I was impressed with a couple other guys. Drawing a blank. Who's 24?
Jadarian Price.
Price does a great job pressing into the line of scrimmage and then last second cut because he sucks everybody in when he presses in the line of scrimmage, and then it's one cut and he's out of there. I found Price's film to be really, really impressive. For me, like I said, it's fun because I give these takes, and that's just I only watched the last 2 or 3 games that you guys had. And so I give these takes, and the Notre Dame fans are like, what are you talking about? This, that, and the third. That's not how it was all season long. I'm like, dude, I'm just watching.
Don't worry about that at all.
I'm just watching it. That's the fun part for me because I had the same thing with Boise State, and they're like, we've been doing this all. I'm like, dude, that's the cool part. What I do, I don't go back and look at all season. I just watch your most recent games, and I'm just telling you guys what I've seen. So I made the statement that RJ Oben was the best pass rusher, and I got a mouthful from Notre Dame fans, and I'm just saying, hey, I'm watching the tape. I guarantee you there's been people that are more productive. He's probably the least athletic out of Bryce Young and 44. He's not as athletic or fast or talented necessarily, but he's the one that I see work the moves. He has a counter move. He always uses the spin move. He's always actually working his hands. So is he, the most talented guy? Absolutely not. But as far as one-on-one edge rusher, when you guys are just bringing 4, I think he has the best opportunity to get home just because of the moves I've seen him work. So little things like that, I've enjoyed breaking it down. I was on Mike Singer's show last night, and because of all the hate I got, obviously I want my offensive line to come out of this with no sacks. But I'm almost rooting for an RJ Oben sack so I can give you guys that I told you so.
Well, it's fun. You mentioned before, when you watch all 22, and we break it down, I think different than a lot of people. And I told you this kind of, in DM and everything. I think people don't look at the moves and people don't look at what they're doing. It's just production, straight up. And it is interesting that you mentioned how you've only watched the last 3 games because RJ Oben has been a lot better in the last 3 games, right? So I think for you, it's you kind of saw the uptick of him, whereas you said, everyone else kind of has the full scope of everything. Yeah. So that's interesting. Before we get into the nuts and bolts of this game, you were a Notre Dame recruit, and you were a 2021 signee. You actually, I was looking back, and you committed to Penn State. This was right kind of after COVID was hitting and everything. So you were able to go on visits and things of that nature. You had gone to see Notre Dame, you had gone to see Penn State and a bunch of other places. So Jamie, our guy, our recruiting guru, does all the film study and everything. Jamie would have he would have scouted you. He would have looked at your tape. Jamie, what was your take on young Landon as a recruit coming out of his top 100 player, top 100 player?
Yeah, I mean, he was a guy that obviously, like, I was a fan of. I think that 2021 class. I mean, Landon,
Blake Fisher,
Rocco Spindler.
I don't mean to cut you, Jamie. I don't mean to cut off your story real quick. I go to write one of my friends whose name is Buchanani. It's B-U-C-H. So I go to my Twitter DMs. I type in B-U-C-H. Well, I see like three-leaf clover group chat from 2019. And I'm like, no way. I'm like, wait, what is this? And I go and look. And so I'm like, hold on. I will tell you, it was a group chat that Tyler Buckner made to try to recruit everybody. I'll read you the names from this group chat. So like you said, and we all were talking about, we're all going to commit. So just think, Notre Dame, if you would have had this 21 class, Tyler Buckner, Emeka Abuka, Lorenzo Stiles, Blake Fisher, Bo Collins, who is now obviously there, Kane Barong, Greg Crippen, Gabriel Rubio, Rocco Spindler, Donovan Edwards, Tommy Brackmeyer, Ben Chrisman, and myself. That was the group chat. And we were all like, we're going to go to Notre Dame. We're going to do it together. You guys got like a quarter probably of those guys.
There was a good amount of guys that Notre Dame ended up with in that group.
Sorry, Jamie. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, no.
I had to. You were talking about the 21 class. I'm like, oh, we got to talk about this.
No, I mean, it is, because I think that was one of those ones too where Blake, especially, like, Notre Dame fans know, he was like very involved in trying to like recruit other offensive linemen as well. And that class too, obviously, that was one of those ones where I think because of how COVID hit, and it didn't allow, like, I remember there was like a big junior day that was planned, and then no one could go to it. And then after that, like, people who they thought they were going to get, it was like, they didn't get them. It's because of this junior day got canceled, and people were freaking out. And but Wyatt Millam, who went to West Virginia, is a very good player. Obviously, he was, part of that 2021 class. Another guy that, Notre Dame really like. I think, for me personally, I think they took 4 guys in that class. It was one of those things where they wanted to. Notre Dame fans kind of had that list, and it was like Blake Fisher, Rocco Spindler, Landon, and Wyatt Millam were pretty much that. Or Rucci was another guy too, that they were like, hey, if they take 5th, they got to take Rucci, right? Who obviously went to Wisconsin. Now he's at Penn State too. So it's funny how it all comes around. But I think that 2021 class was loaded with talent. I mean, obviously, Joe Alt was in that class and was not a super highly ranked guy at the time. And, Notre Dame fans were like, oh, look at his ranking or whatever. And ends up being a top 5 pick, probably the best guy out of that whole entire class. But it's just funny how it all, comes around. But it was definitely something that, when you chose Penn State, I think everybody who was a Notre Dame fan who follows recruiting very closely was, disappointed. They thought, because, they thought they had a really good chance. I knew that Notre Dame was one of your finalists, with someone that you considered obviously strongly. But, it wasn't like you made a bad pick. You obviously would be a great school.
I appreciate it, man. It was Notre Dame was definitely 2. I'm gonna be honest. The 2 reasons I probably didn't go to Notre Dame. Number 1 was proximity. I'm a 3-hour drive to Penn State. It was easy. Number 2, Brian Kelly was your head coach, so the problems arise.
I don't think you have to explain to everybody.
Let me ask you this. Did he have your phone number?
Yeah,
this is a big thing with Notre Dame fans. Did he have your phone number? Did he call you? Were there any text messages sent to Landon Tengwall?
No. I think I had his phone number, but no, I didn't have his phone number. It would still be in my phone. It absolutely would, because I still have every coach's. No, I don't have his phone number. I never had it. What was that a thing? Did he not talk to people?
There was a whole thing in 2019. It was Jalen McMillan Notre Dame. Lathan Ransom was another one where it was like two guys that Notre Dame was in on, and then there was a Carter Carls who now works for the Aggies 247 site. He wrote an article for the South Bend Tribune about how Brian Kelly like dropped the ball with those guys, didn't call them. And so
I never once. As you know, I was a top recruit. I never once got a call from Brian Kelly. It was all Jeff Quinn, and I like Jeff Quinn. It was hard when I had to call him and let him know that I was coming to Penn State. He made it difficult. It was hard. He had Quentin Nelson calling me, like all this stuff, and it was just like I said. The number one thing was proximity, but I genuinely anybody that follows me, you can follow me at Landon Tengwall, YouTube, Twitter, all that stuff. My number one thing is like transparency, authenticity. I just be honest. Like Brian Kelly was kind of like fraudulent to me. I didn't like his vibe. He felt like he was kind of fake. And so, yeah.
Checks out.
If Marcus, I said too on Mike's show, if Marcus Freeman was the head coach, hopefully I'd still be playing, but I'd be sitting here instead of Joe Paterno stuff, I'd have Lou Holtz stuff behind me. So, that could have changed some stuff. I'm a big fan of Marcus Freeman, hell of a coach. And I say Notre Dame, after watching the tape, Notre Dame is by far and away the best coach team in college football, without a doubt. I don't have a question.
Hold on. I want to just ask you this too, because actually, it's funny because this is just how it's like all interconnected. But James Franklin, so I played at Idaho State, and way back, and my freshman year there, the wide receivers coach, James Franklin, was the wide receivers coach at Idaho State that year. He was. I remember him on my recruiting visit. He was a heck of a recruiter, obviously, like someone that, I had not met until I was on that visit. And he just was an engaging guy, right? Like you could tell right away. I remember him as a freshman, like him giving a speech in front of the team, right? Like different position coaches gave speeches during camp. And he was one of those guys, you just kind of knew that he was going places. He wasn't going to be at Idaho State for very long. Turns out he was only there for a year. He was at Washington State before that. And then he went to Maryland. And then obviously his ascension since then. Just want to get your quick thoughts on James Franklin and kind of the job he's done at Penn State. Obviously, he's been there like a ton of years now. I think it's 11 years. It's had 6 11-win seasons. So obviously he's had a ton of success, like really good, successful time there, but he's always kind of been, missing like winning the big one. Like it's always kind of been, and this has kind of like been a breakthrough year for him. Just kind of give me your thoughts on like Coach Franklin.
Yeah, he's one of the best recruiters I've ever met in my life. Incredible people skills. He actually has a master's in psychology, so kind of makes sense. He knows how to talk to people, and it was an easy sell for me. Like I said, I felt a connection with him. As far as being a coach himself, obviously a great coach. And I will say, obviously, like you said, we haven't won the big games, and that has been his problem. I was actually talking about this on a show I was on. We won as far as underdog games, we were technically underdogs against Utah in the Rose Bowl in 23. We won that game. And obviously, Jair Brown, who's balling out for the 49ers now, he knocked Cam Rising out of the game, which unfortunately kind of led to the downfall of Cam Rising's career. But that game was close right there. But we ended up winning that. And then technically 2021 Wisconsin, week 1, we were underdogs, but I don't know why we were dogs in that one. So really the only games that Coach Franklin has won where he's been underdogs is 23 Rose Bowl against Utah and then 2016 against Ohio State. Like those are the only two. We got to win the big games. Like this is big. I fully admit that Penn State got a great schedule, got a great playoff bracket, probably the best one out of anybody, even better, I think, than what 5 got. But a big fan of his. Like I said, I'll always be a supporter, and whatever he does, I'm here for it. Obviously, NIL struggles here a little bit, not nearly as much as Notre Dame, so struggling with that. I'm trying to help out, do things along those lines. But no, he's a great coach, and he's working his way up, man. He's doing a great job, and hey, it's here for the taking now. I mean, a lot of people did not think Penn State would be here this year, and here we sit in the semifinals with an opportunity, and like you said, a coin toss of a game for James Franklin to send his team to the national championship. It doesn't seem real. It doesn't sound right because we haven't been in these positions in a long time, and especially since I've been around Penn State. So should be fun. I'm excited, and let's see. Like I said, Notre Dame is the most well-coached team in college football. I wholeheartedly believe that. And let's see if Coach Franklin can outcoach Marcus Freeman after Marcus Freeman just outcoached Kirby Smart. So it's going to be a good one. We'll see.
It's interesting you say that, just because like because we cover Notre Dame, and especially me, like I don't have a great feel for how other people feel about the team, right? Like sometimes you feel like, Notre Dame has good coaches, right? And I feel like they've done a great job this year with Joe Rudolph. Just the fact that they barely had any starts. They had a bunch of linemen go down early in the year, the guys that they wanted to start. They wanted Charles Jagusaw to be the starter. He's been gone the whole year. Ashton Craig's been gone. They lost Billy Schrouth for a good, I think, 4 or 5 games there. So it's like they've done so many things. They've had so many injuries on defense. And like you said, to me about how they have they plug in players and they don't miss a beat with these guys. And just the way that they, are assignment sound and all the technique wise and all those other things. It's been really interesting. I do want to talk a little bit about what you've seen Notre Dame do vis-a-vis what Penn State struggled with in the last round. Talk about the axe blitzes that Notre Dame does. I'm going to pull up some clips of it, what you're talking about, but just kind of go over the axe blitz and what that means and what you've seen and how Penn State struggled against that in the quarterfinals there.
Yes, I'll just start talking while you pull it up. But Boise State just kept going double A gap mug. That's where the 2 linebackers are standing up in the A gap, and then they just go axe blitz. Axe is called axe because they make an X. One guy comes down and picks, the other guy loops around, and so we struggle with that pretty bad. Now, right here, so 56 for Indiana does a great job diagnosing this. He gets his head around, he picks it up, and the running back actually kind of like builds a wall here. So Indiana did a really good job. The problem is, as you can see, the guy that hits the center first is the penetrator. Then 34 is the looper. And that's what we were struggling with. Our center kept getting picked. He couldn't stop getting, we kept sliding to the left, just like this. And instead of that center opening up and going to we call trap the penetrator, our center Doc was just getting hit on his side and getting blasted, and then they were home free. Pretty much, it happened 3 to 4 times. So it's something that we struggled with. You guys don't run a ton of axe blitz, but you will send axe blitz. You also will just go linebacker plug. That's where no one's really blitzing except just one guy just plugging in the B gap. And sometimes if your eyes are not up as an offensive lineman, you can be like, all right, I got a double team up there. I'm going to take care of the down man.
You muted yourself, bud.
Sorry, guys. Sorry about that.
But it's all good.
You guys will plug linebackers, and it's just hard. You're constantly challenging the offensive line to have great communication, to make sure their eyes are correct. And I think that's why Al Golden's so successful. Like I said, it does not matter the numbers on the field, the numbers on the back of your guy's jersey. It is the scheme that matters. And because everybody is so well coached, and I think, like I said, that is a testament to who Al Golden is, who Marcus Freeman is. And when it's like that, we had a defensive coordinator like that by the name of Manny Diaz, who's the head coach at Duke now. I've been around that. That means the players have an ultra respect for Marcus Freeman and Al Golden and the rest of that staff, because they're able to just plug and replace. That means those guys are bought in.
You you used a word called the domino effect on the offensive line when talking about how to kind of deal with some of Notre Dame's blitzes. I'm going to put up another clip here. You can kind of explain that and how kind of needs to deal with some of Notre Dame's pressures.
Yeah. So the biggest domino effect is when you guys go 2 penetrators, 1 looper. So right here, you got 2 guys and you see him looping around. So the biggest problem is, like you said, this has to be started by 75. So 75, the right tackle, has the loop man. So as soon as he loops, he has to knock his right guard off, and then the right guard has to knock the center off. So you see how that's a domino effect, similar to how you're sitting at a red light and one car has to go and then the next car can go and the next car. You can't all just go at once, because that's not how it works. So right here is a good example of that. Like I said, 75 goes boom, over. 74 kind of gets it, and then the center gets off. So it's not always going to look pretty. It's really difficult to make it look pretty. But this is a good job of picking this up. And you see the stunner, the looper just gets picked up by the center. And, these are the type of blitzes you have to deal with. And Al Golden is going to bring these blitzes and then play press man coverage. And Xavier Watts is going to be back there roaming. And good luck. You better get that thing out in about 2.5 seconds, or they're coming home. That's the thing. Unless you pick this up perfectly, and like I said, it's really hard to. You got 2.5 seconds. So that's why it's so hard. His defense is really challenging to go against.
What do you think about Penn State's run game against Notre Dame vis-a-vis the way Notre Dame fills with their secondary players? I feel like that's been a very big part of Notre Dame's success against the run, especially against Georgia, where the safeties were the leading tacklers, but they were able to, like, they got a bunch of run stops. So, like, how do you feel like that fits into what Penn State's going to try to do running the ball?
Yeah, I mean, like, we're going to come out, like you said, we are going to run the ball. Even though we have Drew Aller, we are a run-first team, and it's going to look like you guys. It's duos inside zone. We're going to run up the middle. We're going to run mid-zone, which is where you're aiming right at the right cheek of the right guard, the left cheek of the left guard, and that's what we're going to do. Now, I will tell you, you guys run cover one more than any team in America. Penn State, against cover three, PFF has them at like a 72% grade. In the run game against cover four quarters, we have like a 75% run game grade. Against cover one, when Penn State is running the ball against a cover one defense, PFF has us around like a 92% like run game grade, meaning that we thrax cover one when we're in the run game. Now, I don't think we played a defense like Notre Dame, and honestly, when we played Ohio State, that was not the case. They played a lot of cover one with Caleb Downs high, and they were bullying our offensive line. And that's why they won that game. They dominated up front. So, I think we played a lot of teams like Purdue that play a ton of cover one. So it kind of spiked the numbers a little bit. But as a whole, it is.
Purdue spiked everyone's numbers this year.
Yeah, exactly. They really helped out. But still, as a whole, I would really have to dive into that. I was actually just found that out this morning when I was looking at PFF grades. And generally, I'm not a big fan of PFF grades for players. But as far as overall schemes and saying, hey, where is our success? I think PFF is great for that. And to just see such a drastic difference, like a 20% grade difference from running against cover three versus cover one, it was very clear. So, I talking about the schemes we run, I mean, we'll get outside. We don't really do too many like pitch plays. But I think we're going to come in with a lot of misdirection. That was something that I studied when USC's offense played you guys. Early on, they found a lot of success in misdirection, freezing the defense's eyes just for a half a second to go back the other way. Georgia's biggest run of the game, that was 28 yards. It was that pitch play. They were bringing orbit motion around. They brought the tight end on a split flow motion all to the right. So everything, and Schuler was the deep safety, and he got caught napping. And instead of Xavier Watts being the deep safety, so they're bringing two guys to the right, the quarterback's looking to pitch right, and then they hand off back left. And it was a 28-yard gain. So, like, that is the type of things we need to do as an offense. And Kotelnicki has been, like, kind of, it's kind of like the wizard when it comes to pre-snap motion. But then he'll also get way too cute at times and do some really dumb plays when it's 3rd and 1, and we come up and we do Tyler Warren takes the snap under center, pitches it back to Drew Aller, and then we try to do, like, a screen throwback to Tyler Warren. And it's like, dog, Boise State's defense, every single time pre-snap, it's where's 44. So like a deceptive screen to Tyler Warren, it doesn't work. Like you need to go to Amari Evans. You need to go, out to a different receiver. Try a wide receiver screen. Like let's go a quick slant. They're bringing Axe blitz, quick slant over the middle because the middle's wide open. Like that's why I need Kotelnicki to take that next step. And I've seen it now, Golden, of him being able to adjust in game because you have the tablets now. It's a different game. It's not, hey, we'll watch the tape on Monday or Sunday. It's let's fix this thing right now, right here. And I even said this on my pregame show. If you have a screen that you like, if you have a trick play that you like, you can run it once, but you better land that damn punch against Al Golden because you try it again, his defense ain't going for it. There was multiple times, specifically USC tried to come back to some trick plays and some misdirection that they did early in the game that worked for one play. They came back to it. Al Golden said, no, my guys are trained like straight killers. So that's kind of what I've seen too from Notre Dame as a whole.
Yeah.
Sorry, Greg, but I just want to ask you about Kotelnicki because, he's someone that when Notre Dame has had a offensive coordinator opening the last 2 years heading into the season, and he was someone that, when I'm like studying guys and just looking at different data and stuff, obviously what was going on at Kansas stood out. Like they were doing a lot of fun stuff. And just like as a casual observer, you watch Kansas's offense and they were just one of those teams that all of a sudden you're like, Kansas, what the heck's going on here? They're just doing these things differently and all of a sudden becoming this explosive offense and really like fun offense. And I mean, obviously, Kotelnicki's done a great job at Penn State this year. Obviously, they become better. You see, Aller's been better, and I think he's a huge reason behind that because he does a lot of things where he sets up, he schemes open easy throws for him to make. Where people might not think like the deep ball is an easy throw, but that is an easier throw than dropping back and sitting back and having to read it, as a regular when you're calling like a regular like 2nd and 11 play, right? Like if you have something schemed up. So I think that is something that is, obviously he does a great job of that. And I think red zone specifically, like he always has a great red zone package with all that. And yeah, but
except Ohio State.
Yes. Yeah. I thought that it was very strange to kind of see that really that how they kind of approach that one. But I think though that in watching him, because I watched I watched a number of games. I think that he's one of these guys who does a great job. Like these plays, like it's like kind of almost like the water boy where it's like he's got these plays and it's like he's throwing them out there and he does a great job of doing that, but he does get way too cute and thinks like it's a 2nd and 2. Hey, this area of the field, here it comes, gadget, something like that. And then he just gets the offense out of rhythm. And I think one of the things when Penn State looks really good is they are running like their base plays and they are having success. And then they're countering off of that rather than some of just like the wild stuff. And not to say that the Wildcat of putting Warren in the Wildcat against Ohio State, obviously that was getting an explosive play out of that. You run quarterback counter out of that. That's obviously was really the most success they had running the ball in that game. But I kind of think that, he will get stuck in games and get out of it, the rhythm of being a play caller. So just kind of like what your thoughts are like, as you've seen him, he's obviously still fairly young and inexperienced, comparatively to a Golden. Just what do you think of him as like a play caller when he's got into these situations where, they are kind of feeling a little bit like things aren't working as well and how he kind of gets the offense back in a rhythm?
Yeah. So here's what I'll say about him. And, going kind of, I've gotten to watch the transformation from early on. And when we played West Virginia, which was obviously a bad defense, it was fun to watch. He was using orbit motions to pull linebackers out of the box to, make it a 5-man box instead of a 6-man box, like little things like that. And then Nick Singleton broke off a huge counter run. I've seen him in games. Drew Aller is clearly a little nervous early. The nerves are there. He's putting balls in the dirt where they should not be. The mechanics aren't clicking fully. And he gives him a very easy completion. That's like one of his plays that he knows we're going to be able to hit them with this, but I want to save that for when we need it. He will start to kind of get Drew Aller going. But as you mentioned, there'll be times where we're 14-0 against Boise State. They got that fumble, and we were going down. It's about to be 21-0. We fumble the mesh point. Boise State gets it. Our defense stops them again, and then they punt it back to us. So we still have the ball, 14-0, but now we're on our own 10-yard line. As I mentioned, I was talking about that Tyler Warren play. We do a pass, and we're gashing them. We're gashing them in the run game. It's Boise State. It's Mountain West. They don't got it. We're killing them. He goes pass play on 1st and 10. Then he goes kind of a fake screen to Warren, and we have to dirt it because Warren's covered because, as I said, Boise State's defense was, hey, ID 44, where is he? Find him every time pre-snap. And then it's 3rd down. And it's like 3rd and 2. Tyler Warren comes up, tries to do like a fake, takes the snap under center, pitches it back to Drew, throw back to Tyler. It gets dirted again. And instead of just running the ball and dominating them, like that's the drive we come out with to kind of as our response to getting punched in the mouth a little bit, even though they didn't punch us. We just fumbled the mesh point. And he basically shits the bed. I'm going to be honest. And then Boise State goes down, scores a touchdown, and they start the momentum. You could feel the momentum start to swing. When I think anybody watching was like, oh my God, this might be like 56-0. That completely changed the tides of the game. So I need him to be a quarterback-friendly offensive coordinator in this game, not, that guy that helps Drew Aller out. And at times I say, wow, that was an impressive play call. to get us going there, not the guy that's being somewhat of a detriment to our offense and getting way too cute and trying to call these extravagant plays. And also against the Notre Dame defense that is incredibly disciplined, they don't work as well either against that type of defense. So.
All right, Landon. I told you I'd let you go. You got other things going on, but there is one other thing. We didn't get to the offense today, but Landon did put out a scouting report on Notre Dame's offense versus Penn State's defense. You like Abdul Carter as a spy? That's interesting. Check it out there. It shows a lot about Notre Dame run game. You are concerned about Rocco Spindler's ankle for Notre Dame. You want to run a bunch of stunts at him, get him moving around with his feet.
That's my guy too. That's my guy. I love Rocco, but
you know what? I know that's your guy, and I'll tell you how I know that's your guy, Landon. But we got a little parting thing for you.
Oh, let's go. We got a chubby Blake Fisher. Me with my shirt off. That's great. Can you please? You got it. Can you send this to me?
Yeah, I'll send it to you. Yeah.
I appreciate that. I unfortunately I do have to bounce because I am having, for all the older Notre Dame fans, Alan Pinkett I'm about to have him on for my pregame show. So nice. I do everything, guys. Listen, it's not just one side. Obviously, I do this for Penn State, but I try to be unbiased as possible and show some love to everybody involved. So he's actually a family friend, and I'm really excited to get him on. If you don't know, one of the greatest running backs ever to play at Notre Dame. So it should be fun, but sorry I had to bounce. This is a legendary photo right here.
Where can people find that? Where can people
find that? At Landon Tengwall on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, whatever. I'm putting out great content all week long. I just dropped a 2-minute breakdown on Twitter going the offensive line, left tackle to right tackle on a pass play, really getting in depth about their usage of independent hands, how well coached they are, picking up a stunt. We basically see all of it. Your right tackle, incredibly impressive. His movement, his independent hands. I'm in love with your right tackle. So really should be a fun one. I'm excited. But yeah, check all that stuff out. It's going to be coming all the way up till game time. And if you enjoy live tweeting, I'm obviously going to be kind of tweeting from the Penn State side. But when Penn State gets whooped, I also post videos and talk about that mid-game. So if you want to follow me at Twitter, at Landon Tengwall, we'll have a great time all week. And no matter the outcome, I will have a couple post-game film breakdowns, post-game shows, all that stuff. So should be a great time, guys.
All right, Landon, thanks for coming on. We appreciate it. Good luck on Thursday, and we'll talk to you soon, big guy.
Yeah, appreciate you guys. Have a great one.
All right, later. All right, that's Landon Tengwall of Penn State. It's fun to get that. Matt was able to send over that photo. That's good stuff. I know Matt. Yeah. I know Matt covered his. He had to have covered his recruitment. So that's very, very cool. But he does a lot of great stuff with film and everything. And you always want to take advantage of film and the media as much as you can. And if you need to do that for your online company, for your social media page, or a highlight reel, whatever it might be, then you want to go with VSR Media, founded by Notre Dame football pregame host and Emmy Award-winning anchor Vahid Sadrazadeh. VSR Media provides professional and cinematic video and photo. Whether you're looking for a collegiate or pro-level highlight reel, have a personal story to tell, or are aiming to diversify and grow your business, VSR Media specializes in short and long-form video storytelling, social media management, and website design. VSR Media also captures professional headshots, senior, and sports photos. Contact them at vsrmediacompany.com. Mention Irish Sports Daily to receive 20% off your first project. Visit them online or give them a call at 574-800-9106. I do have a question about CNEP. Yes, he was a former Penn State player. I believe he had to retire early because he had
medically retired.
Yeah. He was there was concussions there. All right. There was a question in here that I want to get to. He mentioned about Penn State being able to run the ball against cover one. And there was a question I need to get back to. I should have started and I didn't. I apologize. But basically it was, why would a team be predisposed to be a better running team versus cover one than versus like cover 4, cover 3 zone? Jamie, if you could go into that for us, that'd be great.
Well, I mean, one of the things when it's man, and they run a ton of RPOs, right? Yeah. So this is something to think about when they're running RPOs. Those receivers aren't blocking, like they're running routes, right? So when they're running routes, obviously, if you're playing man coverage, which cover one is, right, it's man coverage across the board with, one high, single high free safety. Your DBs have to run with those guys. They have to run with their things. If they don't,
we've seen this with against Notre Dame when teams have run toss, crack with the slot, and they've
absolutely, yeah, right. And that's happened in games. Obviously, Louisville had success with that on a play. USC did as well. And so when you do that, your DBs are thinking they have to play the pass, because if they're not playing the pass, Aller's going to pull it and throw the ball. And if that's a chance too, obviously, for big plays to happen, they have to protect that first. So when you're getting that, you're obviously going to get better chances to create big plays from it, because there's less, second and third level support for that, right? So all it takes is basically, if your backers get beat, there's a chance to, all of a sudden it's got to be a big play. And those DBs are chasing. They're chasing because they're reacting to what is. So, I mean, we saw that, like you said, that toss crack. That's something that has happened a lot. You've seen some of it with the speed option stuff, whatever. That's something that teams have done. Now, sometimes it's a lot like calling a play. When you call like a man beater in a passing play, when you're calling a man beater passing play, and then you get zone, it's a bad situation, obviously, right? It's something that all of a sudden you think you're going to get a man. All of a sudden, that guy that you thought was going to be open based off this one little rub route you're going to run, he's not open because they're passing it off, and then you can't do what you want to do there. It's the same thing with running as well. So if you call that toss crack and they're not playing cover one, that's when you get a lot of TFLs and stuff. If you're running stuff to the perimeter, which obviously Notre Dame does a great job in the perimeter with their safeties there, and you've seen it with like Schuler and their corners, Watts, obviously getting TFLs there too. So it's a little bit of taking a chance. I think Purdue really, really terribly undisciplined when it comes to those kind of things. You saw how Notre Dame just exposed them with a lot of like outside run stuff there too. And, that is something, that I think what Al Golden does so well is, you see, like, as Landon pointed out, they get them on that thing. Well, if you see a formation, and if it's like formationally, this is what you're doing out of this. Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? They're going to make sure and check into something that they're not going to be exposed in that same thing. And that's when those teams have done it, because they usually try it again, and then it ends up bad for them. Like it's not successful for them, right? So, that is something where they probably have had success there, but you've seen, less success for teams doing it lately as the season went on, because obviously those are things that they needed, Notre Dame needs to adjust to and fix. And it's also too, like, if you look at like where Notre Dame was, there was, let's say, a little bit of concern about Notre Dame's run defense early on in the year. Mm-hmm. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't like elite, right? And really, from like about half the way season on, it's been elite, really. And and one of those things too is because schematically they've made adjustments to those kind of things to put them in less of those situations.
Yeah. There's a Penn State fan in the chat. I've been kind of monitoring Eric Holmes. He makes a point about Aller has run for a ton of third down conversions, more mobile and more athletic than he looks, lost 15 pounds. He's no Leonard. He can pick up first downs. He's 6'5", 240. I think you've mentioned to us, not like previously in the year when they weren't on the radar for playing Notre Dame, I think you've mentioned in our chat, like, why don't they run Aller more than they do?
Yes, they should run him more.
He has run for 34 first downs this year, so that is a good amount. He mentions he's no Leonard. Leonard's run for 56, but 34 is legit. Like that's, you're a weapon in picking up first downs with that many. So that's interesting and something to kind of monitor. I wish I'd been able to bring this up with Landon because I wanted to ask him about this, but I'll ask you because I know that you have kind of tracked, Penn State and everything. I feel like they have a little bit of USC to them in that on offense when they are a different team, and I feel like they go to a different place when they have to chase a game. Because I feel like their most impressive offensive games this year were against USC when they were chasing. They were down multiple touchdowns in that game. And then when they got down like 28-10 against Oregon in that game, when I think everyone was kind of had their minds changed on Penn State because of that game and the way that they played offensively and the way that they kept coming back. It looked like they were going to get completely blown out. They did end up losing, but they had over 500 yards of offense. They ran for over 300, almost 300 yards running the ball. It just seemed like they were a different team, and they were a different team against USC offensively when they have to chase. Because like you said, like I was not impressed with them against Ohio State, not simply because they weren't able to really move the ball that much, but just because I just didn't like what they were trying to do. Right?
Yeah.
It would seem like too cute. Right, you're doing too much. Like you're running the ball, you're running these plays, you're moving the ball a little bit, and then it's like, okay, now we're shifting the line, and Tyler Warren's the center, and you're doing all these things, and it's just like maybe just do your stuff, right? Do you feel like that? Do you feel like they have a different gear when it's like, okay, we got to open it up, we got to chase the game because we're down a little bit more? Have you kind of noticed that?
I mean, I think I definitely noticed that in the Oregon game for sure.
Yeah.
And I think part of that is because Aller, he is one of the best at not putting the ball into danger, right? Like he does not. Last year, I mean, obviously that was one of the things that, and I think they probably drilled into him because if you watch him in high school, and he's someone who kind of went, was like kind of later guy onto the radar, popped up like later on in his high school career. He was someone that was very like freewheeling almost, right? And you would see a ton of off platform, just like big time throws, just, very creative stuff and improvisation stuff that you were like, wow, this is something. And it just popped, right? And I do think that, there is some Josh Allen to his game, right? But I think maybe it's been coached out of him a little bit, like to say, like, don't do this, do this. Hey, be careful here. Don't, and I think when that Oregon game specifically, and he was just letting it rip, right? Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, when you do that, there's a better chance that it's going to go into danger, but then you're also going to get some of those throws that are just like, wow, because he has an electric arm, probably the best arm that, Notre Dame has faced this year. I mean, he's got the best tools, really. And, and Eric mentioned about the thing running. Like, I think he's a really good athlete. Probably one of the reasons why they didn't run him more is because of Perdula, right? And they had that option there. But now they don't have that option. But at the same time, they're obviously, they don't have anything behind it, really, right? Like, they have a true freshman who's thrown 2 passes this year, is the backup now. So if Aller is banged up or hurt, they are in, I mean, everyone who loses their starting quarterback, it's going to be not good.
Yeah.
It'll be horrific for them. Like, you don't want to put in a guy. It's not even like their quarterback was a 4-game guy that they got it in a bunch of time where they was doing stuff. No, like he got no time. So it was like, it would not be a good situation for him if he got hurt. So there is probably some of that wanting to protect him, but you're at the end of the year here. So I wonder if they would do a little bit more, because they have done some of the stuff with like him on design runs that you're a little bit like, obviously he doesn't pull it that often with his own read stuff. So teams like don't really prepare for it, don't really make it a big issue, but he can pull it and do some stuff. He can run, like he can really run.
He has 478 rushing yards. Like that's not,
that's not
nothing.
And and as a scrambler too, he will take it. He'll take what you give him. He'll take what you give him. And if there's a lot, like, I mean, he'll get like 20 or something, right? Like he's, and he's big too, right? He's big. He's a little Big Ben-ish, right? In terms of like he can shake off some stuff and all that
Yeah.
too. I think, one of the big things with him though is he has been bad in big games. Like he's been worse, and obviously that was last year. You really saw it, and I think he's obviously been quite a bit better this year, than he was last year. But if you take a look at like where he's been overall, during his time with the last couple of years, he's under 50%, and 0-5 in games against Ohio State twice, Michigan, Ole Miss, and Oregon. So when they're playing like kind of like the most talented teams, the most talented defenses, he's just been worse. And that's just a fact. And I think this really jumped out to me when I was like studying and looking at some of the stuff with him. He was 9 of 28, 32.1% on the intermediate throw. So between 10 and 19 yards. And great, those are like the toughest throws to make because a lot of those are like over the middle, traffic, whatever.
Over linebackers, between players, stuff like that.
Yeah, and those are the kind of throws that obviously he has the arm capable of fitting it into tight windows, but ball placement, all that kind of stuff has to be great, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's just, for him to have that in 32.1%, that's in against Ohio State, Oregon, Boise, and SMU. So like their biggest games, like that stands out when someone's like kind of that bad at that. And you can see it too, where it hasn't been where he hasn't made, those throws in those games in the same way. And like, even in I definitely noticed against SMU and Boise State, he was getting sacked more, but it was like, because he didn't want to let it go. He didn't want to throw it away because he was like even worried about something bad happening there. So, we talked about the pressure to sack rate and all that, and how that obviously was huge in the last couple of games for Notre Dame, because when they ended up getting a lot of sacks whenever they got pressure against Rourke and Stockton, well, in the last two games, it's 27.3% and 30% pressure sack. That's bad. Like that's really bad. If that happens in this game, that's kind of how you can lose the game, right? Like,
and against Ohio State, it was 25%.
Yeah. So it's like one of those things where there's very red flaggy stuff. And I want to add this too, because, our friend Michael Bryan, shout out to the Cord. He, looked at, his yards per drop back in some of these games, and 4.9 against Boise, 4.3 against SMU, 5.8 against Oregon, 6.1 against Ohio State. But if you look at during the year, obviously like 9.0 against USC, 9.1 against UCLA, 12.7 against West Virginia, right? Like under 5 yards per drop back is that's ugly. And so he basically had nothing to do with them winning the last two games. And those are great defenses. Like SMU's defense is a good defense. Like for the most part, they're a pretty good defense. They got a good defensive line. They got some good athletes, but like Boise State's defense they easily had the worst defense in the field. Like that's a defense that he should have a ton of success against, and he didn't. He didn't really have it. Not the way that you would expect him to. They had all that success running the ball. And they ran it fantastic against them. Right. Katron Allen was great. Nick Singleton was really good as well. So if Notre Dame was able to stop the run and put it on Aller, if he does come up through and he has like this monstrous game, it'll be the first time. Be the first time. And there used to be this idea, that Notre Dame fans always had, oh man, the quarterbacks always have their best games against Notre Dame. That was the prevailing thought for years and years and years, right? And under Al Golden, nah. Like these guys have their worst games. We always point to Caleb Williams because he was the friggin' number one pick, and he was that bad against Notre Dame. But it's everybody, right? And the other thing is that even if you start good, like Stockton started really well. Like he was 7 for 7, but then he was like 50% the rest of the game. And, and it was like, 5.0 YPA the rest of the game. So, you can have some things and get some things early, but if they get a beat on you, that's going to be a problem. So I think there's, real questions about, I thought what Landon brought up about Minnesota and like how they had the line movement, because that is something that stood out to me too, how they really struggled to run the ball in that game. And obviously that was a game they probably should have lost. Right. So, and obviously Moore was on Aller in that game. So, I do think that Penn State, they will scheme stuff up. I really like, Warren is a stud. He's an absolute stud. Both backs are great. They're really, really good. Different. Like Allen is, I think, a way better pure running back. And then Singleton is just home run hitter. I mean, if they throw him the ball and get him in space too, he can.
Yeah, I was going to say, out of the backfield, he's a problem.
Yeah. But really, like, and they have a couple good receivers, but literally just a couple, and that's it, right? It's kind of I don't know if Penn State. I would be surprised if they had a ton of success against Notre Dame's defense. I mean, no one has really, and I think it'll much be more about what Notre Dame does on offense against their defense, which is really, really good.
Yeah. To your point about Aller not putting the ball in danger, he has 12, according to PFF, he has 12 turnover-worthy throws in 822 attempts, right? He's not putting the ball at risk.
Yeah, he's not putting the ball in danger, yeah.
Yeah, and I think he's got a little bit of, because Landon, I don't know if maybe he has some inside knowledge to this. I'm not really sure, but he talks about his nerves. He talked about his nerves early in games. Maybe he's someone who just gets nervous, right? And look, obviously, in the bigger the game, and I think it's one of those things like he gets jacked. Like you could tell that he's a competitor, right? Like he competes his butt off, and it really matters to him. And some people just are predisposed because it matters so much. They just get tight, right? And they get jacked up and they get nervous and that sort of thing. So it's something to watch. It's something that kind of I've been thinking about the last couple of days is Al Golden, and I didn't think about this going into, because we talked about getting ready for championship rounds and playoff rounds, and every game's an elimination game. It didn't click in my mind that Marcus Freeman was a novice to that, but Al Golden isn't, and he was on that Cincinnati staff that went to the Super Bowl, and they had to go to Kansas City and prep for Pat Mahomes,
the best quarterback in the world,
like peak Travis Kelce, right? Peak Pat Mahomes,
Yeah.
And so like being able to do that and in that game, if you recall, like Pat Mahomes started out really well. And then that second half, Cincinnati completely shut them down. They were able to win in overtime. And to your point, it's like you can start well against Notre Dame, but they will eventually figure you out. And they will come with something that has that is just takes the things that you want to do away. They're very, very good at doing that. Matt Freeman is obviously very excited for me to mention Cincinnati Bengals going to the Super Bowl 4 years ago or whatever it was. Your thoughts on Notre Dame against their defense? We haven't really talked about that. We didn't really talk about that as much. What are your kind of thoughts on that piece?
I mean, I think, I hate to say it, but it's just like one of these things where every defense Notre Dame is playing in this playoff, it's just, the matchups are tough. The matchups are really tough. Third straight game where they're going to play a defensive line that is just nasty. Like they're just absolutely nasty. Do I think their defensive tackles are different than Georgia's? They're good. They got good players at defensive tackle. But they are, I would say this isn't the same as Georgia. They are a better version of Indiana's defensive line is how I would kind of put it, with a lot of like movement, just ton, like, man, these guys just like incredible lateral stuff that they do. athletes at edge, right? Abdul Carter is, I mean, there's a reason the guy's going to be a top 5, top 10 pick, whatever, right? Like, he's special. Like, Notre Dame has obviously played great. I mean, poor Anthony Knapp. This guy's like, hey, Nick scored it. And he just, like, after another, he's got to play so many top edge rushers. And Carter is better than all of them, really. He's the best. I would say Jalen Walker's pretty close, but he's Carter, I think, is a higher level because he's just a better athlete. Like, he's just an incredible athlete, which is why Landon said, like, him as a spy. But I'll tell you what, if I was Penn State, there's no, please, I mean, Notre Dame should be begging for him to be a spy because that means he's not rushing, and I think he could be more of a problem doing that, so, and then they have other guys, right? Like Dennis Sutton is a stud too. He's a very good rusher. I think, God, what's the other guy's name? Vanover. He's a really, really good edge rusher as well, like a great sub package guy for them. But Carter, that is a big deal if he's not playing, obviously, because he is a game wrecker. He's the guy that could make a play. This guy's just friggin' 22 and a half tackles for loss, most in the country. Like, he can make game-changing plays and just kill a drive, right? That's what he can do. He can just absolutely wreck a drive. And obviously, even if it's not something where he's getting a tackle for loss or whatever, he forces a bad throw or he forces the ball to be thrown away. All of these different things, right? So I would say that, him, if he plays, which I think he's going to play. I think he's going to play, or at least try to. It does matter if he's not all the way there, because if he's not, that could really impact him. And honestly, too, because the guy said it was like, oh, cover 3. I mean, it's football. If somebody has, it's like if I'm going against somebody with a bad hammy at corner,
you're going to send a go ball.
Yes, all day, right? That's what you're going to do. And it's the same if you're playing a guy, he's got a bad shoulder. I mean, first play, we're running counter right at him. And it'll be like, hey, let's see how that thing is. And, maybe he meets it and you're like, I guess he's good. And then whatever.
And then you adjust.
And then you adjust or whatever. But if you're like, man, he didn't really play that the same way or whatever, then you can test certain things, whatever. But yeah, of course, you lean on a guy extra hard when there's those kind of situations, right? So it's the same kind of thing where Notre Dame doesn't want to get into these 3rd and long situations. I think it's pretty proven they're not going to be in a good spot if they get that. It was not a good situation for them against Georgia at all. And the thing is that they stayed on schedule all the time against, or most of the time against Indiana. So they were able to convert a lot of those things. The tackling on Penn State, we're monitoring.
Shockingly bad. Like those numbers, I don't believe them. Actually, they are a worse tackling team by the numbers than USC last year.
Yeah,
last year USC was missing 10.8, basically 11 tackles a game, and Penn State's missing 12. They have 177 missed tackles. In their 15 games. It's unbelievable. You had a stat: 57 missed tackles in the last 3 games. Is that true?
Yes.
Is that true?
I mean, I believe that's true. That's what PFF had it at.
Jesus.
Like, that's the problem. Amazing. I mean, a lot of those came in that Oregon game where it was just like they were chasing the whole game, right? So there was that. But still, like, they did not tackle well in these last 2 games either. And I think when you look at it just overall for the year, you just look at the overall, like you said, the numbers, and they're 111th in PFF's tackling grade. But they have several players that are like near the bottom in terms of their missed tackle percentage, right? Which, I mean, I totally agree with like Landon with like the grading of a lot of stuff with PFF, like, especially when it's just like, what does a 77.8 mean What does that mean? Like, how does that form? We don't know, right? So it's just like, okay, sure. But I think when it comes to like, hey, just counting a pressure, counting a missed tackle, this guy's in coverage, even though some of that stuff can be skewed a little bit too with, depending on the call and what it means and all that kind of stuff too. But in general, that's very helpful to look at some of that stuff, right? And when you see guys like, okay, here it is, Tony Rojas, that guy flashes big time. He's got 3 picks. He had the pick 6 against SMU. Really big time athlete, super fast. I know Landon has mentioned he was a guy that might be a spy, and I think he is because he's a really good green dog blitzer, right? Like he's a really, really good green dog blitzer. But 22.2% missed tackle rate, 9th worst out of all power forward linebackers. 31.4% missed tackle rate versus the run. Dead last out of power forward linebackers. That's an issue. Like, that's an issue. That's a starter for them. Excellent in coverage. Like I said, great athlete, really dangerous blitzer. That is a problem. Dominic DeLuca, another guy for them. Another one of the guys who had the pick against SMU. 26.2% missed tackle rate. 3rd worst out of power forward linebackers. A concern. A major concern. Like, you've had games where I think Jalen Reed and Zachy Wheatley, Wheatley. I think those guys are pretty good players overall. I mean, I think Reed is definitely a really good player, but like, they've had a lot of games where it's like 3, 4 missed tackles, and it's like multiple games. It's not just like one-offs. So you're like, what's going on here? And the guy who had the pick 6 against Ohio State, Zion Tracy, right? 38.2% missed tackle rate, 2nd worst out of all power forward. He's a nickel for them too.
Yeah.
So, and it's like mostly obviously after the catch. Like, when you have that many guys that are like, this guy he misses way too many tackles, right? So when that is happening, it's either one of two things. It's either they're not doing a good job coaching it, because they certainly have the athletes. Athletically, they're as good or better than Notre Dame, athletically. Like, they got athletes all around. Or some of these guys are hurt and they're wearing down and playing through stuff. Obviously, J.D. Bertrand, perfect example. When he had the thing with the wrist.
Yeah.
Just an absolute work.
Yeah, he was a missed tackle.
People were like, man, this guy sucks. Look at all these missed tackles. Guy couldn't grab with one of his hands. He was playing through it, right? So it's like, that makes a difference. So we don't know. We don't see the what is listed and what isn't in terms of they don't have to put everything on the injury report, especially now. So I don't know. We don't know how banged up. Everyone talks about, Notre Dame fans know Howard Cross, this and that, or Love, and they're guessing a lot. And Abdul Carter, obviously, he's such a high profile guy and he misses the second half. People know that stands out. But it's like, we don't really know like how banged up Xavier Watts is now, who's gone to the tent like basically the last 3 or 4 games or whatever, right? Yeah. But I mean, he's still playing at a super high level. But yeah, like, we don't know how banged up all these guys are at this point of the season, because everyone is playing through something. And maybe there's a bunch of guys on PSU who are playing through it, because that's a major concern. And when you have, they are like 3rd best stuff rate out of all the teams in FBS. They got a 20% havoc rate. They absolutely get after. They're disruptive up front. They got really good Kobe King, who is like, I mean, he's definitely a sure tackler. He's one of the best versus the inside run in college football. Great inside linebacker. But when you see all of those kind of missed tackles, and you just think about Jeremiyah Love, and let's just assume.
Where do you go ahead? Would you go ahead?
I'll just say, for argument's sake, let's just say like he's the same guy he was at Indiana versus Indiana.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
I mean, he still broke quite a bit of tackles.
Right.
In that game.
And explosive in that game.
Yes.
As I recall.
So if he's that same guy, and Jadarian Price is just who he's been, and Riley Leonard obviously, can break a tackle too. They're going to break something. They're going to break something.
Yeah. I mean, it's like what Notre Dame wants, like what they need, right? Like you said, there's an explosiveness aspect to Notre Dame in their running game, and what it's been. I mean, look, they hit a couple explosives on Georgia. I mean, it's unfortunate one of them got called back, but like it was still there, right? And so, do you think Jeremiyah Love's going to be what he was against Indiana? Do you think that?
I really have no idea. I don't know. I mean, to be honest, like you couldn't really say based on what you saw at the beginning of Georgia. I mean, I certainly thought he ran hard.
I didn't think there was any issue with him.
I didn't see anything before he left the game that was doing it. It was more of like there just was not a lot of room there for him to do much against Georgia, and he certainly had some nice moments, but I mean, it is a huge deal if he's not there. But I will say that Notre Dame at least has depth. Like,
yeah. I mean, JD Price is a problem.
Yes.
Like even if it was like Jeremiyah Love could not play at all, JD Price is legit. I mean, he's just not as dynamic, versatile, right? Like,
yeah,
he's a tackle breaker, but he's not a make people miss guy, if that makes sense. Like, I mean,
look, not in the same way. I mean, there's
not jumping over.
There's levels to it. There's levels to it.
Yeah, there's levels to that. It's just like I think Notre Dame's offense against their defense is just kind of. They have to be able to hit the play. Like Notre Dame they had some 3rd and shorts that they did not convert. Like you got to convert those. You just have to. There's so many things that Notre Dame can do on 3rd and short. To not be converting them is just not how you're going to win this game. Like you have to be able to do that. And I don't think 10 points is going to get it done against Penn State in this one. I just don't. I think Penn State has evolved offensively a little bit. I don't want to say they're the greatest thing ever, but I do think the Oregon game did give them confidence. I do. And look, they didn't play that great against SMU. But then the way the game went, they kind of didn't have to just because of the pick sixes, right? I mean, their first 2 touchdowns were pick sixes.
Yeah.
And so, but I do think they have a little bit that there is that they feel like they hit that gear against like a good defense. And I think they're going to move the ball a little bit better against Notre Dame than I think people might expect. That's just kind of a hunch that I have. I do think Notre Dame.
I think it's a better offense than Georgia's.
Oh, for sure. Like, yeah, like 100%.
I don't think their line.
You don't like their line as much. You don't like their line as much, but I do think they just have more dynamic players.
Yeah, they have more. Their top 3 skill guys are better.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. And the quarterback.
And Aller's better than playing a first-time starter, Stockton.
Yes. Yeah. So it's going to be difficult, right? Like, can Riley Leonard be efficient throwing the ball? Can they hit any explosives in the passing?
They have. That's a thing. That's a huge piece of it. You have to be more explosive.
Yeah.
You to win 2 games where you've had 1 explosive in the passing game, like that doesn't happen very often, right? And obviously they were in a rock fight with Georgia, so it didn't ultimately matter as much. And then with Indiana, they were just so efficient that it didn't matter as much. But like, it's gonna have to matter at some point. So I really think like they're gonna have to dial some stuff up, play action wise. Penn State has given up some stuff in play action against a lot of these teams. I think that's gonna matter. They've given up, we talk about the tackling, they've given up a lot of yak in these games too, right? They just, because the tackling hasn't been as good. So can you just turn something where all of a sudden Faison catches something in space and he catches it at 8 yards, but it turns into 25, that kind of stuff is going to matter.
And I feel like both offenses are hoping for the same thing. They're hoping for an explosive in the running game. and they're hoping for something in the passing game that they can get over the top of the defense, right? And look, Georgia was able to hit that, and it ultimately didn't matter, right? So, but those are the things that they need. It's just, you know, who is the more efficient team on that front? Who's more efficient and who is more explosive in this game? I think is going to kind of be the key to the whole thing, right? Who is the team that seizes control? You know,
Yeah.
Like we said against Georgia, right? That touchdown before the half was so big. It's like, again, 7 up is so much different than 7 down when you're playing defenses as good as this. So it's just kind of that deal, you know. It's like Eric Holmes said, it's just like, it's a great matchup. It really is. And it's 2 classic programs. It's 2 classic uniforms. It's college football, right? You have
Love it.
Ohio State, Texas, Notre Dame, Penn State. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. Kevin Gartland asked, anyone else think that showing love in the big knee brace during open practice could be a little subterfuge?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know how they're.
I don't think so. I honestly,
Maybe.
the fact,
I don't know.
I'll tell you what I'll say. I'll tell you what I'll say. The fact that he was out there doing any of that little indie stuff, I thought was good news. They don't need him to do.
It means they're going to play. It means he's going to play in the game. Doesn't mean he's going to be effective or how close to 100% he's going to be. It means he plans on playing in the game.
Yeah.
Is Penn State being coy by Abdul? I don't know if you saw it, but Abdul didn't practice with them yesterday when they had their open stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe, but you know, he's tweeting out stuff with him in the back of the tank or whatever, right? Like
he's in the tank. He's a big Star Wars guy, apparently. It seems.
Yeah. So
something about Jedi.
You know, I think Notre Dame fans should hope that he stays in there just like Cobb Vanth, right? And
there you go. There you go.
There you go.
All
There's
right,
your Star Wars reference, everybody.
There's your Star Wars reference. All right. I think we can end it there. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If you like what you heard today, please hit the like button. Please hit subscribe. Please hit subscribe. We're almost at 9,000. We're almost at 9,000 subscribers. I want to get to 10K subscribers. We've got so much good content on our YouTube channel. You got to subscribe to it. We got Power Hour. We got this show. We have Matt's posting videos, interviews, clips, all those things, practice clips. Hit the like button on all of those. Hit subscribe to our channel. We'll be back tomorrow for another Hit and Hustle show, previewing the game, talking about the game. I'm going to do, Jamie, are you available on Thursday to do like a pregame show? I think Mike wants to be on
that. Probably.
We'll see. Either way, we're doing it because I want to do it, right? We're doing it. We're doing the pregame show on Thursday. We'll do the postgame show on Thursday, and then we'll have the Friday after show as well. So thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of your day. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the like, all those things. Have a good rest of your day. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Keep hitting and hustling.